women in their 20s, mid-20s, being diagnosed with breast cancer, mid-late 20s being diagnosed with autoimmune disease, polycystic ovaries. Then there's the whole spectrum of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. It's scary when you think about it, but then also exciting when you sort of, for me, realise that the answers actually can be quite simple if we just take things back to basics. There's just a few small changes you need to make that can really help your health, no matter what the issue is. So that's probably me. And please.
So before you went through Graves' disease, you ate meat and dairy, or just had like a normal lifestyle?
Yeah, and I think on top of that, I thought I was being healthy at the time. I mean, I went to the gym every day. I was working in this building up here. I went to the gym every day, and that was my stress release as well. And I'd be down there. I certainly wasn't doing a yoga class. I needed to be sweating. So I was on the elliptical trainer, making sure I sweat for 45 minutes at least, because that was good, right? That's really healthy. And also I felt it did emotionally release things, so I'd go up to the office and feel better. In terms of my diet, I thought I was healthy. I was, eating lots of low-fat dairy products, low-fat yogurts, a lot of nasty artificial sweeteners, a lot of sugar-free Red Bull and Coke Zero and Subway chicken salads, and things that you think, I don't know, you grow up in our generation. We grew up in this sort of low-fat, everything should be low-fat, and that's what you should eat. So I felt like I was having fruit salads with low-fat yogurt and chicken salads from Subway and Coke Zero, and that was healthy. That was probably
normal.
Yeah.
Probably be considered quite normal.
Yeah, and it's funny. Some nutritionists actually there's nutritionists that recommend that.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of the change, I stopped having meat when I was starting to read. I guess, and then there's the other aspect. I stopped having the meat initially from a health perspective, because I was reading all these this interesting research about you treating cancer. A lot of it was about treating cancer and going either to a fully vegan diet or going to a fully raw diet to treat these types of diseases. And so I started doing it initially from that perspective, from the health perspective, like, maybe this could help. And then it was from there that I started learning more about the ethical and the environmental aspects of it, which really shocked me and made me really upset. And I'm not sure if any of you if you're interested in finding out more about that, there's definitely some really great documentaries and books you can read about it. And it's very much a hidden industry, and particularly in New Zealand, the meat and dairy industry, we never really see, unless you're intimately involved on a farm, and my guesses are most people aren't anymore. It's not a very nice place to be, and so whilst I continue to not eat animal products from a health perspective, it's more and more become a ethical thing, and more and more an environmental thing as well. Just for some interesting stats, which I never knew. The biggest contributor to global warming is not all the transport in the world combined. Trains. We talk about, hey, don't drive your car, maybe bike to work, but actually choosing to not eat meat at dinner actually does more for helping global warming and the environment. It reduces carbon emissions more than all the transport in the world combined, which is, and it's only increasing because world population is increasing, particularly populations like China is increasing, and they are, as they move towards more of an affluent Western lifestyle, as well as all the health issues, that they're also getting all of our Western health issues, but it means that the rate of consumption of animal products and production of animal products is just going to skyrocket, and So if you forecast that forward in terms of effect on the planet, and we're talking about melting of the ice caps and killing sea life, but also all of the animals that live, and also local populations that live on the edges of oceans and depend on those things for their livelihoods. So whilst it started as a health issue for me, it became a much, much bigger issue in terms of ethics and environment. And yes, I'm really passionate about that now, and but I think it's exciting to become aware of it, aware of the issues, and whether you decide to stop eating animal products completely like I have, or whether you just make a move towards that and reduce the amount of animal products you're consuming, either way. It's interesting actually when you look back at what we used to consume 80 years ago. We just were over in Italy for 3 weeks, which was amazing, and I was reading some facts about Italians, and they, from 80 years ago, they're now consuming 10 times more meat than they were 80 years ago, and you can just talk to your grandparents and you will hear from them that they had a roast chicken on a Sunday night. It was a special treat, and it was a small one, it wasn't a big size, whatever. It was a small thing, and it was a Sunday treat, and maybe they might have meat once or twice during the rest of the week, but it was a much lesser proportion of their diet, whereas now it's, for many people, it's every meal. So I think it's definitely something to consider, and each person, it's a very individual topic, and so it's for every person to consider themselves in terms of their health, but also in terms of how they feel about animals and the environment. Yeah.
I wanted to ask more questions like everyone else will.
Yeah.
How raw are you, and what are your thoughts on raw?
So I eat a lot of raw products, produce, fruit and vegetables. I'm not fully raw at all. I know people have thrived on that quite well, and I think the more and more I've looked into it, it can be really beneficial in the short term, particularly in terms of treatment of chronic diseases. There's a number of programs internationally where you can go for cancer therapy, and which prescribe it. And there's a great documentary if you haven't seen it. If you guys are interested, I've got about 10 documentaries that, if you haven't seen it, that are really interesting. They're actually fun to watch as well. There's one called Simply Raw, where they took I don't know if have any of you guys seen that? Where they got a bunch of people, I think about 10 people who had really high cholesterol, overweight, diabetes, and then put them on a raw foods diet, so raw vegan diet, so very, very plant-based, and it would have been very, very high in nutrients because you're not cooking anything, and they had amazing results. So I think in terms of that type of treatment, it can be really beneficial. In terms of long-term for the general population, I think more and more I've been learning about, there's other philosophies like Ayurvedic philosophy in particular, which talks about warming spices and warming foods being really beneficial to the body, particularly in cold climates or during winter, where the body actually responds better to those type of foods. So there's that element to it, and then there's also the element of some foods actually take on greater nutritional benefits when they're cooked. So tomatoes, you have a higher lycopene content once it's cooked, and carrots have a higher beta-carotene content, which is a precursor to vitamin A when they're cooked as well. So I think for most people, I would say a combination of both would be what I recommend, but I can understand people who use a fully raw diet for therapeutic benefits, and some people will do it for longer as well because they really feel good on it. But I think that's probably that element is an individual thing. Yeah.
Anybody else want to ask the questions? How was it? Are you vegan as well? No, sorry.
Oh, Tony.
Yeah, I am. And I've got to say I was quite sceptical about it as well when we first started.
Yeah.
But as I've eaten a vegan diet for longer,
exactly. Yeah. And interesting too, as well as it being a male thing, when you look back historically over when people started eating more meat, it was an affluence thing as well.
Yeah.
So it was like the kings, in the 1800s, it was the kings that had these big banquets of meat, and that was seen as a sign of affluence, and it was the peasants that were eating fruits and vegetables and, legumes and boring things like that. And so when we moved into, particularly post the war, when we moved into a society where we have, democracy and everyone can make it, and everyone can live everyone can, the American dream type thing, then everyone was seen as, well, if I eat meat, then I am living like the kings, and that's kind of how it developed. I've read a couple of books that talk about the cultural basis of animal product consumption and where that came from, which is quite interesting to overlay that on it as well. But with Tony, actually, I mean, it was quite interesting because when I first changed for the health reasons, and then I would start bantering on to him about the ethical reasons, normally over dinner while he was eating a beef curry. And I mean, I cook at home because I love cooking, and he specialises in other areas. But so we'd eat vegetarian-based food at home, but then when we'd go out, he'd always make a point of, we're out now and I'm going to order my meat dish, so I'm going to order my beef or my lamb or what have you. And I sort of dig him about it a bit, but then realise, I have to stop that. I can't put my views on someone else, and I mean, everyone needs to make their own decision about those things. But then over time, we'd come back from dinner and he'd go, oh,